What's up, sons? It's BlindRod with Tech once again, and I had a couple other videos planned for the week, but Capcom has surprised us all with the announcement of Monster Hunter World on the PC, along with some system requirements. We're going to go over them, and then I have a sample build that I'm going to show you guys. It'll cost you around $700 US to get you up and running on August 9th this year. Coming up this year, August 9th is the release date. Stick around. Welcome back. So I'm pretty excited about Monster Hunter World. I've been playing it on Xbox One X, and while it does play very well on there, unfortunately, even with the frame rate favored option on the Xbox One X, it doesn't quite hit that 60 FPS consistently, or at all actually. And having a PC version is what I've been waiting for to really hop in and start getting that Hunter rank way up there. So now we have the announcement, and taking a look at some of the screenshots, it does look like it's going to have full advanced graphics settings out there. And the first thing to note is that the ambient occlusion just has an option of high, so there's no option for HBAO, which would be the NVIDIA specific ambient occlusion. So looking at that, I think this isn't going to be a Games Work game, and I think we're going to be able to go with the AMD GPUs, and you'll see why that's important here in just a second. Moving on from there, going down the list, we do see a level of detail option, which tells me they did pay attention quite a bit to the PC gaming community and thoughts and opinions on a robust advanced graphics settings menu, and I'm looking forward to actually benchmarking this game once it releases. And the level of detail is just basically going to be how far out the camera renders the textures that overlay the mesh, which leads us to the next option, which is level of detail mesh quality. And mesh is essentially, think of it like the framing on your house, where the textures would be the drywall or the outer portion of the house, whether you have siding and so on. The mesh would actually be the framework, so you can actually turn that level of detail up and down as well. So it's looking really good for a PC port. However, what should you be looking for when building a system for Monster Hunter World? Let's hop into it. Alrighty, so starting things off, your minimum system requirements is going to be an i5 4460 at 3.2 gigahertz, or on the AMD side, an FX 6300, 8 gigabytes of memory, 20 gigabytes of storage at least, and then an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 760 or a Radeon R7 260X. The VRAM minimum is important here, especially when you have these types of cards out here, is going to be a minimum of 2 gigabytes of VRAM, which tells me that the VRAM is going to be the most important part when picking out a graphics card. The DirectX is just version 11, and the sound card is just going to be DirectX 9.0C or better. Note, this is a 1080p 30 FPS when graphics are set to low. So if you want to move up to high or to low with 60 FPS, you're going to have a recommended specifications here. We're going to be looking at an i7 3770 or i3 8350 for the Intel side, and on the AMD side, they're saying a recommended of the Ryzen 5 1500X. Memory is going to once again be 8 gigabytes of system memory, 20 gigabytes of storage, and then the GPU recommended is going to be a GeForce GTX 1060 3 gigabyte or an AMD Radeon RX 570 4 gigabyte. I don't know why they put the X there, probably just carried over from the CPU listing here. The note again is going to be 1080p 30 FPS at high settings, and that should net you about 60 FPS on low settings. If we want to get to 60 FPS high settings, I'm thinking you're probably going to need a GTX 1070, or you're going to want to bump up to the RX 56 from AMD. I actually put together a list for recommended settings build here for us to take a look at. It's actually already in my cart, so you can see the prices of everything here, and we'll just kind of scroll down. And as you can see here, I've got you a power supply. We'll go over that in just a second. I decided to go with the Ryzen 5 1500X over the i3 8350 because if we we went for the base model, we can't overclock it. And the other issue is it's already still more expensive. And because we have the new 2500X coming out, you can get this processor for 150 bucks. That's a quad core 8-thread processor and is a much better pick over its counterpart, which would be the Intel, which would only be a true quad core. So if you're really going for that, of course, I would bump down to a 1300X and probably save a little bit more than the i3, which makes no sense in their recommended specs in my humble opinion at this point. Taking a look at the motherboard, we found a good deal on the MSI B350 Pro VH Plus. It's going to run you $64 US on Amazon right now and will support all of the features that we're looking for or that we need. The next important part when picking out a Ryzen system is going to be the memory, and here we actually just have some very basic memory. What I was looking for was a budget 2666 8GB kit. You want to make sure that you pick up a dual channel memory kit when you're building a Ryzen system, so 2 sticks of 4GB to meet the recommended specs, and the speed is the minimum performance I prefer on Ryzen, which is going to be 2666, and in most cases you can overclock this a little bit more. You can check out my how to overclock Ryzen video up in the corner, which I'll link for you guys. $78 for the 8GB kit. Now the storage, you could save some money on just a regular disk hard drive. However, because I don't feel like those should be in any systems anymore, we went with a basic Crucial MX500. This is going to be an M.2 over SATA, not PCIe. While the NVMe protocol would be faster, we're looking for more of a budget range here, and pulling in $109 for 500 gigabytes is going to be pretty solid. You can always back this up with a WD Western digital drive that's a spinning disk for another 50 bucks or something like that, but don't cheap out on storage anymore these days. Moving on, the big daddy is going to be the Gigabyte RX 570 Gaming 4GB. Not only is it the cheapest option for the recommended settings, it also comes with 4GB of memory as opposed to the GTX 1063 GB, which only has 3. And seeing that their minimum specs is going to be that 2GB of VRAM, I feel like VRAM is possibly going to be more important in this case than core clock. Now we're going to test this out, so I'll leave a link to the next cheapest GTX 1063GB for you guys as well. And when these release, when this game releases, I'll test both the 574GB as well as the GTX 1063GB to let you guys know which one wins. I'm leaning towards this just because I didn't see any NVIDIA specific settings, as well as I prefer to have a little bit more VRAM with the later games. I've noticed that it's been trending more and more towards that. For a good bump, like I said, the 1080p max settings, 60 FPS, you're going to want to be looking for the RX 56 or the GTX 1070, whichever one comes in cheaper at that point. Probably leaning towards the GTX 1070 in my humble opinion. Finally, the case here that we have picked is the Masterbox Q300P. It's a micro ATX case, and it comes with 2 RGB fans, which is just nice. It's going to look good and is on sale for $59.99 and even cheaper over on Newegg. I'll try to link that in the bottom. So for this particular configuration, you're going to come in at $733 if you buy through my Amazon affiliate links directly in the description below. However, if you go on a little bit of deal hunting, like I said, the Masterbox is currently cheaper over on Newegg, but the rest of it appears to be the cheapest here, so we linked it. Speaking of, we should talk about the power supply. There is a better deal on the power supplies over at Newegg as well. You can take a look at the Corsair. I believe is $39.99 for a 600 watt. The reason we went with the 600 watt is total system power draw here is going to be about 280 to 300 watts. I like to have myself using about 50% of load, and so that's hence why we went with the 600 watt. This is a rated power supply, 80 plus bronze, and it is 600 watts for $49.99. Actually, let me check that. It was supposed to be bronze rated. Let's check. We might have messed up here. We most certainly did. So we're going to have to pick out a different power supply, and I apologize for that. I don't know. I set this up together at lunch, and I must have messed up. So let's make sure we get a 60 plus. or 80 plus bronze. It still comes out to the exact same price. We're just going to swap it out for this EVGA B1 right here. So let's do that. And I'll just go ahead and show you guys that if we remove this, and I think I thought I was picking this one because it's the same price, but 733. There you go. So this would be my recommended build for recommended settings for Monster Hunter World. The first things you want to take a look at upgrading is going to be the system memory in this case, going up to a 16 gigabyte kit, and the GPU, which I would recommend going up to, like I said, a 1070 or RX 56. Alrighty, so that's going to wrap up all of my coverage and recommended build for the recommended settings of Monster Hunter World. This should net you, like I said, 1080p 60 FPS with low settings, low to medium. And if you're looking at, you know, trying to just get better visual quality, 1080p 30 FPS. Another reason we decided to go with AMD is Capcom has been known to have issues with console ports, and seeing that the AMD hardware is already in the consoles, I'm kind of leaning towards it possibly being better. I think this is going to possibly be another title like we saw with Forza back in the day, where AMD takes the lead in the 574 gigabyte versus the 1063 gigabyte. It's a really interesting comparison, and I can link that one up here as well. If you guys enjoy this type of content, I know I didn't actually do a build, and some people don't like that. If you don't hit the dislike quite yet, let me know in the comment section below, and we'll revamp what we are doing with this sort of announcement, I suppose. Now, if you did enjoy it, mash the like button and let me know, of course, in the comment section below. You guys will determine the type of content that ends up on this channel. I'm just really excited for Monster Hunter World, and I want to already get a head start on putting together a PC for their recommended settings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Tuesday.